For this particular night. We're delighted to have every one of you and all of you here. So along with the tradition of starting on time, we also like the idea of praying. So we will start with a prayer, which will begin. Allah, Elohim, Lord God, guide me, illuminate me, sanctify me. Bind my hands that they may do no evil. Cover my eyes that they may see it no more. Sanctify my heart that evil may not dwell within me. Be thou my God, be thou my guide. Whithersoever thou leadest me, I will go. Whatsoever thou forbiddest me, I will renounce. And whatsoever thou commandest me in your strength, I will do. Lead me then into the fullness of your truth. And we can all say, Amen. Welcome again. We're delighted to have all of you. We sure hope there are enough seats around in one place or another. There are a couple up here, a couple over there, and a whole table full over here. So there's plenty of room for you all to make your way around. You can't be bashful when you come in toward the end. The places that are left are always at the front. I don't know what happens in Muslim temples and Jewish temples, but I know in Christian places, seats up front tend to be in the more numerous. People tend to wander to the back. We are gathered here this evening to discuss welcoming refugees unto others. And we will explain that as time goes on, where perhaps we came up with the title. But I am pleased to welcome all of you here to a very important discussion. It is a discussion about our lives together, a discussion about the other person in our lives. It is a discussion about how we can deal with all of those situations. Our program is very varied, and we'll take a little bit of time to roll right on through it, but we intend to, we hope, engage you quite well as we go on in this evening. You'll notice here already some of the ideas of people being photographed together, and then if you can get close enough, you can read the materials that are there too, and you can find those, needless to say, all on the website. And I'm sure one of our friends will explain that to you. My role is to introduce two people to you. One, you know probably as the director of the Michigan office for New Americans. I know him because his company, Eastern Floral, does the flowers at the cathedral. And that's one of the things that's very important in our cathedral, that we do those flowers just the way they should be, which Eastern Floral does for us very, very nicely. So Mr. Vin Goya, as I told you, is the director of the Michigan office for New Americans. He will be addressing us, and so will David Allen, who is the Grand Rapids 3rd Ward City Commissioner. And needless to say, they will be addressing one issue of people who are coming to our shores and to our city. Bing.
Thank you, Father Bethany, for that kind introduction and also for your business. You got to put a shameless plug in that thing.
Anyway, sorry.
Well, good evening to all of you. And on behalf of Governor Snyder, I want to thank Doug Kotinski and the Planning Committee for organizing this, what I consider a very critically important event for us to have this discussion tonight. I also want to thank Commissioner Allen, and I see Ms. Patty Cottle from the Director of Diversity and Inclusion Department of the City of Grand Rapids here, for their support in welcoming refugees to our city. And on behalf of Governor Snyder, I also want to thank all of our resettlement agencies and the great volunteers for their invaluable work in welcoming our sisters and brothers who are seeking refuge from oppression and violence in West Michigan. Resettlement of refugees has been and continues to be a much debated topic in our state and in our nation. Unfortunately, much of the conversation that has been reported is the conversation of fear and hatred. But I believe very strongly that that noise is loud, but not the voice of the majority of the people in our state, our nation, and this community. Today, each one of us has come together to loudly raise our voices, that those who have fled violence and persecution are absolutely welcome in our nation, our state, our communities, our neighborhoods, our places of worship, and our homes. Governor Snyder, in the Time op-ed piece in November 17 of 2015, made this statement. In a state with many strengths, our greatest is the diverse and proud people who call Michigan home. I remain a vocal advocate for continuing to make Michigan a home for immigrants, including refugees who are escaping violence and oppression in all corners of the world, and I am unwavering in that determination. All of us tonight here, and thousands of others who are not here tonight with us, but stand with us across this state and nation, are committed to overcoming any barrier that could prevent our sisters and brothers from feeling welcome in our communities. Many of us here tonight are doing a great deal of work in ensuring that our processes, our networks, our safety nets are in place to make those who have fled their home countries to feel welcomed. And I know, and working alongside with many of these organizations, that they are also looking for ways to improve their work all the time. And that is why this is so encouraging to see so many of you here willing to participate in that discussion this evening. Before I conclude, let me challenge you, and possibly if that's part of the time for you to have that discussion, because I've been thinking about this for a long time. As you know, and as I know, sometimes we put labels very easily on people. And I'm wondering tonight whether or not we are doing a service to our friends, to our brothers and sisters who've come here by continuing to refer to them as refugees. Refugees is an immigration status. It does not define the person. But yet, because of labels, the way that we in our society use labels, and we can brand people with labels, and we can put them on a shelf when we don't want them. Oh, you're black. Or you're this, or you're that. But it doesn't define the person. And maybe it is time for us to begin to look at these individuals who are seeking refuge in our community as human beings, as children of God. And I know that might be a daunting task, as the work that you are all involved in is a daunting task. But I want to leave you with these words of encouragement. Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. It is the only thing that ever has, says Martin Luther. And then, no culture can survive if it attempts to be exclusive. God. Your work, your commitment, your passion, your presence here tonight affirms to all of us. And we will speak loudly as a community as a city, as a region, and as a state. That we are here because we want our culture to continue on. We are here because we want to change the conversation around refugees and immigrants. We are here because we realize that only by the grace of God, we were born in a country that we did not have to flee. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I can't tell you how it makes my heart glad to see this standing room only group here tonight. It's really awesome. Start off with a brief little personal comment and then a comment as my representative for the mayor. I'm actually standing in for Mayor Bliss, who's not able to be here tonight. I remember in the early 70s, I was a 16-year-old kid, and I was blessed to be raised in a home where faith wasn't something that you just exercised on Sunday, but it was 7 days a week. And I remember our church in the Chicago area sponsored a family from Vietnam, the Chantabon family, and they happened to have a 16-year-old son also named Cynthia. So my mom says, Dave, go over to the Chantabon. They were in the country one day. Go over to the Chantabon family and befriend Cynthia. I said, okay, I'll do that. So I go over there in my 1970 Chevelle hot rod, and he didn't speak any English, and I certainly didn't speak any Vietnamese, but I motioned to him and decided he would like to go out for ice cream. Well, I wanted to show him what my hot rod would do, so did about 70 miles an hour on the side road, and he vomited all over my car. And I realized that probably wasn't a good idea. Cynthia ended up becoming my friend. His dad, Uri, who was a mayor of a town, a highly respected leader, had to take a lowly job as a produce clerk at a local grocery store. And we befriended their family, and we were friends to this day. Jump ahead many years, as executive director of a local nonprofit housing corporation called Lighthouse Communities, when Hurricane Katrina hit, we had 9 refugee families from New Orleans come up. One of them ended up moving into one of our apartments right across the street from where I live. He's still my friend to this day. He got a job and didn't want to leave. His name's Tips. So, you know, this is something that's very personal to me, very real to me, something that I've been involved in since from a 16-year-old kid all the way to today. So the mayor asked me to come speak on her behalf, and so that is why I'm here. So on behalf of the mayor and on behalf of the city, if any of you weren't able to make it, and I'm sure many of you weren't, the mayor gave a really dynamic State of the City address not too long ago. Ben, were you there? Yeah. The illustration that she gave was of a tree. And if Mayor Bliss was here tonight, I think she would extend that illustration in regard to Grand Rapids. And so the tree was Grand Rapids, and she talked about branches, and she talked about roots, and she talked about all the things that it takes to keep a tree alive. But in the context of tonight, if Grand Rapids is the tree that our new mayor described, trees are also refuge. They're places of refuge. They're places of safety. And so I'm just here to let you know of all the agencies involved here. We applaud your work. We encourage your work. We want all the leaders here in Grand Rapids want Grand Rapids to be a city that is open and welcoming and safe, just like the leaves of that great tree. So I'm extending our hand as a city commissioner, certainly on behalf of the mayor. If you and your agency, your church, or your individual working on this issue, come across a barrier, come across an issue that you feel we need to work on, please reach out to us and tell us. We want to break down any barrier, anything that might get in the way to help you be successful in helping the families that you help locate here in Grand Rapids be successful. And I noticed I used the word families. I didn't use the word refugees. So thank you. I applaud your work tonight. Unfortunately, I've got to go to another event, but I just want to encourage you and welcome you here tonight and encourage you in your work. Thank you very much.
Good evening. This is a wonderful problem to have so many people. And I see from up here there are still seats along here and at some of the tables. If you're at a table that has an empty seat, please raise your hand. Please fill in. There's 4 seats up here. We can pull around the table. Still 4 chairs over here. Anybody want to grab them? Do I have to auction them off? Thank you.
This is really an honor to be here. I wanted to introduce myself and one of our colleagues. I am Chris Kaufman. I'm the manager for the Refugee Resettlement Program at Lutheran Social Services in Michigan. And I'm here to hopefully give you a picture of not only the global crisis, but also how a refugee makes their way to our communities here in West Michigan. And I'll allow my colleague Christine to introduce herself.
Welcome. We're so glad that you're here. My name is Christine Van Ord, and I'm the program manager at Bethany Christian Services for our refugee adult and family programs.
Great, thank you. And so to start with, really an astounding statistic. Right now in our world, there are more refugees than there have ever been. 60 million forced migrants, 19.5 million refugees. I think that number is actually higher by a couple of million. The numbers just keep going up and up and up. And to put that in perspective, half of them are women and children. So those that are fleeing, those that need and warrant our protection are some of the most vulnerable people in the world. The definition of a refugee that is used by the federal government in the United States and also by many of the governments overseas and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees is that a refugee has a well-founded fear of persecution, whether that's for race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, political, many different reasons, but ultimately a refugee flees their home and is unable to return. Refugees that come into our community are coming with legal status, just so that's clear to everyone in the room. And refugees are not only authorized to work, but expected to go to work as quickly as possible after coming to the United States. A refugee also, as I mentioned before, is not able to return to their country of nationality, and there's no possibilities of local integration. So we're seeing this all over the world right now. For example, the headline, of course, right now, the biggest crisis we're facing is the Syrian refugee crisis. And refugees there are fleeing to many places, but the most impacted are Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey, the countries that neighbor Syria. And so those countries are not only dealing with that influx, the refugees themselves have nowhere to go. We're seeing them now taking the often dangerous and scary trips in trying to get into Europe because things are so dire in the countries surrounding Syria. So when we're working with the refugees, we're really dealing with people who have been through some horrific traumatic experiences. And at this point, as you all know, for Syrians and for all the other refugees, there is no possibility of going home. And many of these refugees will spend a decade, 2 decades in the refugee camps. Their children sometimes are born in the refugee camps, and that's all that they know. So those that are able to make it to the United States really are a very fortunate group. Those that enter receive legal permanent residence in the U.S. after 1 year. And after 5 years, the refugees are able to apply for and become citizens of the United States. So here's some of the staggering numbers I was mentioning before, the top countries where the refugees are fleeing from. And also, you'll notice too, as we mentioned the countries that we're resettling now, it really follows along the line of these nationalities around the world. So Syria is the largest crisis right now, but the Afghani crisis has been going on. You're going to hear from one of our guests to kind of speak to that experience later on. Somalia has been a crisis for decades, along with Sudan, South Sudan. We have some friends from the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo, that are here as well. The Iraqi crisis, of course, Eritrea, Pakistan. There's people from all over the world fleeing their homes. So what happens when someone flees their home? This is a bit of a graphic that kind of speaks to that issue. As I mentioned before, they're fleeing to neighboring countries, and oftentimes the United Nations, if the need is so dire, the UN will set up shop there, really to provide basic needs, medical care, food assistance, and shelter. And at that point, they try to process all of the refugees and actually register them formally with the United Nations. There are certain countries where the UN is not set up, and there's other non-governmental organizations that can also do this work. 1% of all refugees are referred for resettlement. So if you think about that 19.5 million number, or 21 million maybe, it's really, really a drop in the bucket. And those that are able to receive resettlement are really very fortunate. The process is very thorough, very complete. As you can see here, one of the first steps is our own U.S. Immigration Services goes overseas to interview refugees that are referred to the U.S. program to determine their eligibility based on the U.S. criteria. Aside from that, there are a barrage of security clearances and checks that they have to go through. I also want to point to one of the documents on your table if you haven't seen it yet. We have a handout for you to take home, which is hopefully a takeaway that you can use in your families or in your social circles to point to people about the security clearances, about the whole process that a refugee must go through. At the height of the United States program, the #1 priority is the security of all of us living here in this country. And as you can see from the handout, there is no other visitor to the United States scrutinized more than a refugee coming to the U.S. So once all of the stars align, all of the clearances have to be unexpired, have to be valid. Before a refugee is set to travel, they will go back and do those screenings again, just to verify all of the work that was done previously and that the stories check out. And at that point, the refugees will board a plane to the United States and come to one of the cities that works in agreement with the federal government to resettle them. And so once a case is assigned to us, based on a few factors, how's the employment market in our city, how's the housing market, do we have medical care for those that need it when they get here? A variety of factors go into play to determine the placement. Do they have family members or existing communities ready to accept them and support them here? So all of those are factors that go into this determining the placement. I know that's a question I get often. But once we've accepted a case, really the first point of contact for the refugee in the U.S. is all of us as organizations, as neighbors and friends, welcoming literally as they walk down the hallway at the airport, greeting them and taking them to a home that we prepared for them, whether it's an apartment or a single family home. All of those things happen before the refugee even arrives at the airport. A note about the airport, the travel for the refugees is given to them through an interest-free loan, so the refugees actually pay back all of their travel to the United States after they've, usually about 5 to 6 months after they've arrived, they have a promissory agreement with the International Office of Migration to repay all of those funds. So I always like to highlight that. So the expectation for a refugee to be self-sufficient is very high, and the need needs to happen very quickly. And that happens with all of our help, with all of your support. And we hope that through the rest of the evening, we'll be able to engage in some of those discussions of how you can do that. And we will give you a chance to speak to each other soon.
I heard a couple gasps about that travel loan. The other reason for the travel loan is that it helps the refugee build up their credit history in the United States. So while to some of you it may seem like a mean thing, it actually is an incredible thing for them to be able to start building up that credit history. So someday when they want to buy homes and go back to school or buy a car, that those opportunities are available. There are 9 national resettlement agencies that are part of this process of welcoming refugees to the United States. This refugee resettlement process is actually a really regulated process. And these 9 agencies, there's a different number available in each city depending on the size of the city and the opportunities there. So in a city like Chicago or Atlanta, they have 6 of these 9 resettlement agencies. Here in Grand Rapids, we're blessed to have 3 of them. So Bethany Christian Services is an affiliate of Church World Service, and Lutheran Social Services of Michigan is an affiliate of the Episcopal Migration Ministries and the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services. So for a city of our size to have 3 of these agencies represented is pretty great. We talked kind of about the global need of refugees, and we wanted to talk a little bit about who's coming to the U.S., and then we will speak about who is coming into our area here. So as you can see, these are the different groups that came into the U.S. and how many of them, so these are individuals that came into the U.S. Through the refugee resettlement program. You will see that a lot of those numbers kind of mirror the number of need coming from overseas. It is important to know, I think, that 1,682 Syrians came in. I think we want to really talk here about welcoming all refugees, not just the Syrians. But since the time of the conflict, which started in 2011, about 3,000 Syrians have come into the United States. There are over 12 million displaced, 8 million of them internally. So these are the total refugee arrivals by state. Michigan has been, and we hope continues to be, a very welcoming state for refugees. We have been in the top 4 or 5 every single year for welcoming refugees. As we'll see in just a minute, there's a lot of these refugees will be coming to the Dearborn area or to the east side of the state. But here in the Grand Rapids area, we're receiving about 25% of the refugees that are coming to Michigan. So these are the refugees that came into Michigan in 2015. Again, you'll see that large number of Iraqis that is primarily over on the east side of the state. Here in Grand Rapids, for a city of our size, I think it is so amazing that we literally are welcoming refugees from every single people group that is coming to the United States right now. So that brings some interesting challenges. We've developed a lot of interpretation services and different things like that to be able to really meet those needs well. But I love that we are serving a really diverse population here. In this past year, the U.S. welcomed a little less than 70,000 refugees. In this year, the U.S. is planning to welcome up to 85,000 refugees. So this is the maximum. The president every year assigns a presidential determination, and so up to 85,000 can come into the U.S. This year. They are kind of listed out there by region. If you're looking for where the Syrians would be at, that would be in the Near East, South Asia section. And there is an unallocated reserve, meaning if there's a need in a certain area, it can go over that amount. But it is, but we would not exceed 85,000. Here in West Michigan, we're expecting to receive about 900 of these refugees. Not all of them will come to the Grand Rapids area. We are really trying to build capacity, both of our agencies are, in other cities. Plus, there are many cities like Grand Rapids, Holland and Kalamazoo that really also want to welcome refugees. So we are trying to spread the wealth and share this opportunity with them as well. So we're expecting about 900. Lutheran Social Services, through their 2 contracts, is going to be welcoming about 450 refugees. Bethany, 350 plus an additional 100 Cuban entrants. I wanted to talk just a little bit about Bethany's program. Bethany does the resettlement assistance that Chris had explained for clients. It's focused on refugees in their first 90 days in the United States. We understand that 90 days is not enough, so we do have some other services as well. And this is also a huge reason for why it's so important for us as a community to be a part of welcoming refugees. So we have a match grant assistance program that is for some of the new arrivals up to 6 months in the U.S. It's really a focus on employment and self-sufficiency, and for clients not to have to access public cash assistance. We also have an employment program that can serve all refugees up to 5 years in the United States. So if a refugee originally came into another state and then came here, or if maybe they had been working and then got laid off, or they want to get a better job, they can come back to us anytime during that 5 years in the United States, and we can assist them with job preparation, development, placement, training. We also have a couple health programs which provides case management for those intensive medical needs. And we also have a healing center for the survivors of torture and trauma that provides counseling and case management.
And for the services of Lutheran Social Services, which I would just like to say that we are in the process of rebranding, and about a month from now we'll be announcing a new name for our entire organization. So hopefully we'll be able to spread some of that out to the groups of people that are here today. But as of now, we're LSS of Michigan, so we are spread out a statewide organization. In terms of refugees, we're the largest resettlement agency in the state, serving refugees here in Grand Rapids, as we mentioned. And as Christine mentioned, the refugees going to the east side of the state in Metro Detroit, and also in Battle Creek. So those 450 that she mentioned are for my programs here in Grand Rapids. The programs that we do in Grand Rapids are the resettlement assistance, which Christine mentioned is 90 days. Also the matching grant. I always like to highlight that our success rate and the success rate of many organizations in terms of employment is that after 6 months of being here, 80% of the refugees are working and economically self-sufficient after that time. So to me, that is a true testament to their spirit, their desire to work hard and start over when they come here. There are certain cases that are very, very vulnerable and require additional assistance. I have a program that can serve them with intensive case management support for up to 1 year after they've been here, helping them overcome some of the longer-term obstacles, longer-term medical needs, and hopefully connecting them to people out in the community that can also come alongside of them. We are also doing a center for survivors of torture, so many of the clients that we've talked about have been through horrific experiences, have suffered horrible trauma, and we want to be a place where they can heal and overcome their past experiences. I also wanted to highlight a few of the other agencies that are, some of them are here and have tables out there, so I encourage you all to touch base with them about what they're up to. The West Michigan Refugee Education and Cultural Center works with the resettlement agencies and also with the refugee youth and parents in the school system to really be supportive and advocate to make the transition into the U.S. school system go smoother for the refugees. Thrive is another organization that's here. They offer assistance beyond the initial resettlement period, so sometimes there'll be cases that that do need additional support that for some reason might not be eligible, and we can refer them to Thrive. Senior Neighbors, which serves the domestic population, but also has a program specifically to help refugees that are 60 and older. They help with medical services, Social Security and disability, and many other things. And Justice for Our Neighbors is another partner in the refugee work. They are a ministry of the First United Methodist Church downtown, serving immigrants and refugees with legal and immigration services. And many of our refugees are assisted from Justice for Our Neighbors when they go to apply for green cards or citizenship. So the federal goal, as I mentioned before, of refugee resettlement is self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency is really a term that I don't like to use because if we think about it, who of any of us are actually quote-unquote self-sufficient? But it's really a goal of economic self-sufficiency, as I mentioned before, and a goal that's being met by the refugees that come here at an 80% rate. But when a refugee comes, they interface with many, many different providers. I've mentioned some of them. So they may have family members already here. Certainly the resettlement agency as their first point of contact. But refugees sometimes want to engage in their own faith practices, so churches, mosques, other religious institutions. I mentioned medical care. Grand Rapids has a very strong medical community, and that's been something we've been able to leverage to really help some of the more vulnerable and high-need medical cases. Department of Health and Human Services, property managers, schools, you name it. Refugees have to learn a lot about their new communities. And we always like to say that refugees, because of these different relationships, anyone who really knows how to navigate life in the United States can be a part of that.
Our refugee clients who have joined us here have added so much to our community. They add so much culturally and an incredible diversity to Grand Rapids, which I just think is beautiful. They add a lot economically. So as Chris mentioned, they start working right away and are paying taxes. They are buying cars and buying homes. They're opening businesses. We have one of our business owners here, and I put a picture of Nandu there. He's the owner of Everest Marketplace. There are several, many more than several, lots of refugee-owned businesses that have made a huge difference in our community, and civically as well. I love what one of our speakers came in today, and she had her I voted sticker on, and I love that. I just think it's wonderful. They truly become incredible people of our society, and as being said, not refugees, but people who will come and really bring so much to our community. This picture breaks my heart every single time I see it. This is a picture of Syria. And that quote also encourages my heart every time I read it. In case you can't read it, I'm just going to read it for you. While every refugee story is different and their anguish personal, they all share a common thread of uncommon courage. The courage not only to survive, but to persevere and rebuild their shattered lives.
And now we're going to take some time to see some videos and hear directly from some of our, I'll call them new Americans. So as I'm getting that queued up, I wanted to point out too that if this one in front is hard to see, you do have monitors that are a little bit closer to you, if need be. So this is the story of a Congolese family, a family that we resettled through Lutheran Social Services. And with that, play for you. It's not very loud, is it?
I can turn it up louder.
I'm gonna wait for a second to, I think the amount of people that shown up have absorbed all of our news. But that's a good problem to have, so we thank you. Here.
In Ghana, so we came from young Florida, and I come from Congo University. When I passed through from Congo to Uganda, I lived in Uganda for almost 10 years, working as an electrician. Everything was perfect. So the people who are tracking us in Congo, they really are in Uganda. And we came to our field again. From that, went through this process, moved to the development process. We are here now.
was the door on, take away the once again
I know about you before the internet. I know about life here before, but when I got here, there was this culture, many people, new languages. America is a big country, they have other technology than Africa. But as a technician, I could adjust easily. It's time to get used to it. Everything's fine. Literally, it's something which help us a lot to connect with people, jobs, and there's a guy there, like Tom Cox. I can call him my father. He the one who help us everything to learn culture and stuff. Up to now, I'm doing that. Every time we need help, we just call him. For the picture of them, and for us, we keep working hard. And everything will be fine, that's it. No 10 years, maybe, be there. Yeah.
fly away.
Yeah.
Part of the culture they bring to us, they're also very musical. Christine, I'm going to have you introduce the next guest.
It's my pleasure to introduce Sunita. Sunita, do you want to come here, please? Sunita and her mother, Mobina, have come to us from Afghanistan. They came at the end of November of this year. Sunita left left Afghanistan when she was 12 years old, and they fled to India where they were there for 8 years. And then, as I said, were just able to come at the end of November this year. Sunita, thank you so much for sharing with us today. Can you explain what life was like for you in Afghanistan?
Firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to share about my life and about the stories of refugees, and I really appreciate that. Our life in Afghanistan was very difficult for us because when I remember, when I was 12 years old, we left Afghanistan because of there were many problems due to the education. There were many violence against women. There was no right for girls to go to school to continue her education rather than the boys. So there were many security problems, and we had some family issues as well. So that's why we cannot live there. So we left Afghanistan 8 years back to India. We thought that we would be safer to India if we went to India.
So what was life like in India?
Good question. Life in India, when we first arrived, it was much difficult than we thought because we were very small, and my sister, and my mom was there. We all didn't know the language of there because they don't speak English or they speak Hindi, and we were small also, so we didn't have any experience of that. So it was very difficult. It was a totally different country, totally different culture. And it was very difficult to adjust in that community. But it took a lot of time to adjust there because we didn't have any other choice. We had to adjust in that city. So it took us a lot of time to adjust there.
So why couldn't you stay in India?
We were refugees in India for 8 years, and we were refugees for 8 years. So it was good than Afghanistan if we compare. But still, it was not much safer as in the news or everywhere. There is crimes in India as well, and there is no right for refugees in India to study. There is no right to work because they don't have any work permit as here. We have work authorization. There is no identification card to say there is a refugee and they can continue their education, they can go to work and support their family. But refugees' lives in India is much difficult than ever if someone thought because they have to do a lot of things. They don't have a proper job to support their family, so going a lot of things to support their family. It's much different.
So when you heard from the United Nations that you were coming to America, what did you think and feel?
Well, we were refugees for 8 years, and for 8 years, like we were called as refugees, so there was no hope. Like we said that it is good in Afghanistan, but like it was not a very opportunity to study. But suddenly one day I got a call on my cell phone and from the UNHCR. They said that you have been resettled and can you come on the next month 10th for an interview for resettlement. I said, what? I was like really shocked. There were many emotions in me. I was shocked, I was excited, I was happy, and I was like, and there were many emotions. Like then she repeated again, like, yeah, you have been selected as a resettlement, so come for interview. I was very happy because I thought like here in US there would be more opportunities. There would be opportunities that I can continue my education that I couldn't in India. There would be more opportunity to work and to stand on my feet. So I was very happy. And like whole day I was like, I couldn't imagine, like I was not believing, like, is it right, Mom? Is it wrong? So I was like very happy. Yeah, it was a very happy moment for me.
So you've been here since November. What has life been like for you in Grand Rapids?
Life in Grand Rapids, it has been a very good memory, and like I feel like I have just born new. So because we came here and like we were under Bethany Christian Services, and they helped us a lot to adjust in this country, and we were going to English classes at the Grand Rapids International Fellowship. We were going to work skill classes, which is done under Bethany. And I have started my GED to do my GED, and like yeah, it's very good excitement. Like I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling like I have born new. So yeah.
So you had a volunteer, several volunteers in a local church, Encounter Church, that's been working with you. What was that been like, having the help of volunteers?
Well, firstly, when we arrived, we had a volunteer help us, Jane Henderson. She helped us, we were with her for 1 week. She helped us a lot to adjust in this country because every country has their own culture, their own, like, it's totally different from each country. So she helped us a lot to adjust in that country. She took us many places to show the city, like she took us to art museum, to the Grand River, to many other gardens, and like to know like how the peoples are there, our culture is like this, and we do like this. So she was fabulous with us. She helped us a lot to adjust in that city, and in spite of that, Encounter Church helped us a lot. One of our friends, Diane and Martin, who is here with us, like she came, they helped us a lot here, like to adjust. Also after that, like they are always there whenever we need something. We just call or text. They are always available when they have time. They took us to our doctor's appointment, to our immunization, and even they took me to register myself to GED because I wasn't even in the city, so I didn't know like where to go, which to go. So yeah, they were like they took me to the library and everywhere. Yeah, they took us many places, and like. Now we feel like it's our own country. We don't feel like these volunteers like help us a lot. That we feel like we are from this country. We don't feel any like no, it's a strange country or it's a different country. We feel like we born here. And despite of that, I want to thank my resettlement case manager, Katie Banerjee, who was on the airport for us, who was very friendly. And I couldn't think like she is my case manager. I was thinking like she is my friend, and whatever I need or anything, she was always there. And one of my friends, Sarah Jameson, who is working with Bethany, so she was also helped me a lot to. Actually I lost my hope to study. Like I was thinking that here also I won't be able to continue my education. She encouraged me a lot. Like she said, you know English, you know everything. You should do your GED. She gave me the address, everything. She helped me a lot. So I have many friends in these 3 months. I have like lots of friends.
That's wonderful. So tell us what you would like us to know about Muslims and also about refugees. You and your mother are Muslims and your faith is very important to you. What would you like us to know?
Well, I think that each religion or each faith has its own importance, and I am Muslim and I'm proud that I'm Muslim. I think that every religion should respect the other religion, because it's not something that I have heard that in the TVs or in the social media, in the Facebooks, there is like many crises about the Muslims are not good people, like they kill you. So many people are afraid that Muslims are very bad people. But if like they want, because I think that if they are afraid, beside of that, they should serve that what a Muslim is. Because as in our country, there is a proverb that if a person do something good, he represents whole country. If a person does something bad, he represents his whole bad. He represents that country in a bad manner or his religion. So I think that those like who does something wrong, they put the name of the Islam or the name of the Muslim in the wrong way. They should like search that Muslim is also a human being. It's a good religion. Every religion is good. I think that if we respect other religions, they should also respect our religion. So I don't think that there has to be anything it is good, that is bad, it's good. Every religion has its own importance. So they should respect each other. I think there won't be any these kinds of crises. And I think about the refugees. Well, I have been refugee for 8 years. So I think refugees, first of all, like if we think refugees is like this, it's from that country, from this country. Despite of this, we can say that we should think that refugees are also a human being first. Then they are refugees. No one wants to go there above their comfort zone. No one wants to leave their country of citizenship, their rights, their family, their relatives, and everyone, like whatever freedom they have. They have to fly to another foreign country because they have life-threatening safeties. There is no safe, and they have to fly. So that's why they fly to another country where they don't have rights, they don't have anything to do. They're just there as a refugee. So I think they should know that refugee life is very full of pain. Like as we have been through, like many other refugees which are in India, there have been a lot of pressure, a lot of pain. Their life is like, if one said their life is good, they are refugees, UN is supporting them. I know, but their life is full of pain, full of struggles. Like even we cannot think of it now, which I can think. Like I said, oh my God, thank you. I'm fortunate that I have come to this country. But at least if they cannot do anything, they should know that what a refugee has been through, and they should try to think like they have their life been very painful. And instead of like they say that no one is a refugee, they should try to help them in any manner they can, even emotionally, financially, or to sponsor them or whatever like they can. If I think that if every person do a little bit, it becomes a huge thing. So I think they should do something for refugees.
So my final question, Sunita, is what are your hopes and dreams for the future here in the U.S.?
Well, when I was in India, I lost my whole hopes, my dreams, everything. I said, no, it's my end of my life. But when I came to US, like it has been 3 months, we are here. My hopes and my dreams, which I got, like I thought that it's lost, it's becoming like it's alive. And yeah, my dreams my hopes are becoming more and more because here it's more opportunities. Because as in childhood, I wanted to become a doctor. But when we fly to India, there was no such thing. So I just forgot that. Like I said, no, it's impossible. But now here, what I see what are the opportunities available for us. So I think that I can do that. If in medical field or sometimes, or if any other field, I can do my best. And yeah, I want to give my mom a good and happy life because she struggles a lot in her whole life. She was like, she sacrificed her whole life for me and my sister. And I want to fulfill all her dreams that I can. I just like want to live this life for my mom only. I want to give her a house, like whatever comfort that I can give her, I want to give her more than that she accepts. If I think that I should give her more, which she thinks she has to be ready, it has to be ready for her. So I think that here is a country that my dreams, my hopes, I think it would be complete and I can achieve them. So I'm really glad that I'm here, and I'm very happy for everyone like who is supporting us, who is helping us to adjust in this country. And my friends, our Bethany staffs, all the staffs are like very good for us. So I think, yeah, I'm really thankful for them.
And we are so thankful you're here, and I truly believe that
Thank you so much. I hope that the stories we're sharing can start to really put names and faces to hopefully what used to be a label for all of you. So I want to tell the story of one more person through another video. A gentleman named Mustafa, who's been working with Lutheran Social Services in one of our employment programs. And with that, take it away.
Hi, this is Mustafa, and I come here as an immigrant from Iraq. Why there is dangerous? Saddam Hussein destroyed Iraq. He was the one that made U.S. Army come. So that's why I started as an interpreter for the U.S. and training the Iraqi forces in military communication. And I feel proud by myself to do what I can, because I have been training Iraqi forces, Iraqi officers and soldiers, those people that protect us, protect my family, and protect my land. And I was proud, too proud to do that. We were dreaming about living in America because it's a land of opportunities. If this is the heaven, this is the United States. That's how I choose to come here. Actually, most people think I'm from Mexico. But nobody is being racist. We were so used, and I do appreciate that. Also, most of the cities I have visited, they are not like we expected, because we think the United States just like in New York. Because most of the movies we see, it's very big buildings, very big bridges. But the Grand Rapids, I found it just like a countryside. And it's safe, and found very nice. Even the air is different when we breathe. I used to sneeze 10 times in a day. Here I sneeze once a week. I'm very happy and excited to be in Grand Rapids. I'm looking forward to have a new life, no job, no friends, and to live together in peace.
final refugee speaker today is Nuha. I met Nuha at an event at Central Michigan University. So she lives in Alma and came all the way here. She's originally from Syria, and she's come here today to share her story. She was so dynamic at that event. When I knew that we were doing this today, I thought, oh, I gotta see if she'll come all the way from Alma to share. So Nuha, will you please share your story?
Assalamu alaikum. This means peace to everybody. I am Nuha, and I am from Syria, my original, but now I am settled. Thanks God, we are American now. But my memories is very difficult about my original city, Aleppo. The picture Christian show you, or the crowd of people, you see, this is my city. And if we have time to show you a lot of pictures, what happened, what damage happened. I know everybody loves his city, his house, his family, his relative. Nobody wants to leave, nobody. But our Christ in Syria, the regime, the bad one, he do this. We are Syria from all ancient, all the refugees from all the world come to our country, from Iraq, from Lebanon, from Afghanistan, from Armenia, from Turkey, all of them. And we are very happy to share with them. We don't see, and we share with our family, with our houses, with our food. But when before 5 years start, our regime, he is dictator. His father, for 40 years, was president. And when he died, he wants his son to be also a president. So until now, he is 20 years. So 60 years, the same family, the same person, Assad, anybody go, Assad garden, state, Assad state, Assad everything, just this name we know. We don't know. If we discuss, anybody will go to the prison to rape the daughter. I have two boys, they still there in Syria. If I talk about them, I will cry, because for more 6 months, there is no contact with them. No electric, no water, no internet, nothing. Even before 1 month, I try many times every day to talk just to see what happened. Just my relatives said they are okay, but just pray for them. Maybe nobody, because a lot of muscles, that's Russian. So we just ask for freedom. Freedom, we don't need anything, just freedom to talk. To have I am civil engineering, and my husband also civil engineering. And I was working very good and very job, and we have our own office. But what happened is good opportunity for me because I have citizenship, so I can escape. But what about another person? So they try to escape with their family to. There is no border, only Turkey open now. Lebanon, they closed it. Jordan, only the regime, they said, no, just to Turkey. And after Turkey, we have a very high education. We are 23 million. And half of them now, they are refugee or in the prison, or they torture. We don't know, I have 25 from my family. They are in all the world. One in Austria, one in Sweden, one in German, one on. My son, now he said, Mom, he escaped to United Arab Emirates, Dubai, and even in Dubai they said, no Syria more. So he said, he studied business administration, so where I can go? So he go by refugee to England. He tried to come here, but I said, no. Even his mom, I'm American, his daughter, but this is the policy of America. So he now go to England. And even in England, they put it in the prison and said, he said, I'm a refugee. He said, no, you must stay there. So every day, I cry many times. So what can I do? I must be patient. And this is a good opportunity for me to speak. America is a land of dream. Thank God for that. Anybody, freedom for that. And so any occasion I can go. For me, I volunteer for Red Cross, for baby pantry, to teach math in the Alma, for teaching Arabic in CMU. I think we are not begging for food, or we are working, we have high education. We can work, a lot of them. But I know the politics is very effective, especially in these days, for voting, for collection. So we hope to understand us and to help our people. And I know everybody will go back when the situation in Syria. So first of all, we please to help us to finish this regime, this bad regime. Assad regime is very bad. Yeah, thank you. We don't want to leave we don't want to leave our country. Just to finish from that regime, and everybody will be settled, everybody will come back. Again, we have our home, our business. Even here, I open my own business with my husband, but whenever I will, for my son, he said, no, I will come back to my home because I raised here, there, I burn, I have my friend. So don't be afraid from refugees, Syrian refugees. They are very nice. Yeah, I know that. They work a lot. They don't pick anybody. They want to work by their heart. That's our religion because they tell us, don't ask anybody, any of you need it. So you are a human being. We don't know what are your religion, just together. Let's we live together. So she said just 5 minutes. Sorry for that. But I'm ready for any question. But just please don't forget to, not for refugee, to finish from that bad dictator. For 60 years, just the same person. And his uncle is CIA. His uncle, he is the ministry. His uncle, all of them, his cousin, just the name of asset. Anybody want? So we need your help, please. Don't forget that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're so wonderful to hear the stories from the refugees. And in a couple of minutes, we're going to get a chance to hear refugees that are at your table. Most of the tables, well, there will be a host and a refugee, and we want you to get more individual stories. Before we move into the small group discussion zone, I want to thank Father Gainey and the Catholic Information Center for hosting this event. You've done a wonderful job. Your staff have been fabulous. Thank you very much. I want to thank our planning group, Lutheran Social Services, Bethany, and Welcoming Michigan, to helping put this together. And on the back of the program, you'll see there are over 60 organizations that have joined to be co-sponsored this event. And we think this is the beginning of a different narrative in our community, a narrative of welcoming all. And I'm so happy that you are here in great numbers, far exceeded what we had hoped for. But thank you for being here. At this point, we're asking the host, not all the tables because we had so many more than we anticipated, but at many of your tables there will be a refugee and a host. Have discussions for about 10 or 15 minutes so you can learn more on a personal basis, and then we're going to gather again and talk about what can we do, what are the next steps. So there's also coffee and cookies on the side there if you're ready for a refreshment. But have table discussions, and we'll come back in a few minutes and discuss further.